First of all, I just want to thank the Artful Dodger. They let us use this space free of charge tonight on the condition that you guys will buy drinks. Okay? So, you know, whatever your poison is, they got coffee and beer and whatever you want to have, tea, I'm sure too. So, thank you to the Artful Dodger for supplying this space. It's a great space and for events like these. The next thing is just a little bit about how we got to this point here tonight. I just want to acknowledge Susan Briley. She did I say that correctly? Burley. Sorry, Susan Burley, who originally sent out a call for a solar co-op in Regina, I think earlier this year, and there was a bunch of people at that meeting. Who was at that meeting? Okay, good for you. Welcome again. And so how this kind of started for me, my wife, Morgan Campbell, hi. She, who actually did the press release and stuff for the media, so I thank you, dear, I appreciate that. But we were wanting to do this a couple years ago, and I'm sure like a lot of you, the upfront capital cost was a bit intimidating to starting solar. Everything kind of made sense, but we just didn't have the upfront capital. And Stephen Hall is graciously going to talk about why that shouldn't be as big of a hurdle as you think, and he'll get into that in his presentation. But then fast forward to this summer, we were watching Al Gore's recent movie, an inconvenient sequel, and he talked about how solar, its time has come, and the efficiency has gone up, the cost is going down, and I mean, it was Americanized, of course, just lots of optimism about the solar revolution stuff, which I think is great, but there's obviously some hurdles and obstacles. Not everything is easy. But I think a lot of you, I mean, just the fact that we put an event on Facebook and there's this many people here tonight show that this is an idea whose time has come. And a lot of people are interested. And that's... Someone came up to me before and said, "Oh, nice job." And I was like, I think any Joe could have called this meeting and this turnout would have came, because it's just a lot of people are interested in this right now, and I think it's great. And so that was how we came back from that movie. And we thought, how could we, we got to get back on this solar thing, and then we just decided, well, there's probably a lot of other people like us that want to do this and are just, looking to group together and find ways that we can do this as a community. So I'm just going to out myself and say I don't have solar panels now. I don't know a whole lot about this. I'm getting educated. I want to learn more, and I want to know more, and I want to do that. So I'm sure there's those of you here who know a lot more than me about this, and I'm sure there's others who are just interested and want to learn more. So we're all kind of in that boat together. We'd like to have the spirit of a cooperative in a sense here, where we make some decisions together as a group, and we're going to talk about that a bit later, and what that might look like. So with that said, hopefully I'm not missing anything from there. I want to just, yes, so I will get to that. Thanks, Susan. There's going to be a sign-up sheet, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But that's a good thing to mention now, because there may be some of you who need to get out of here. You can't stay till 8:30, and I want to appreciate your time. There is a sign-up sheet, and the thing is, you want to try to stick around, because we're actually explaining what some of those ticks on the sign-up sheet mean. But at the very least, if you're gung-ho about this and you need to go, you could put your name, address, and email. We're going to protect your information. That's only for the purposes of this group. I mean, I'm not going to put it on Google or anything. But okay, so that will be protected. So if you need to do that before you go, there's actually a sign-up sheet just as you go out the door. on the that welcoming table when you come in, there's a solar panel, solar co-op poster right next to it. And then when we're done at the conclusion of the evening, we're going to have a table with about 5 or 6 sign-up sheets, so that you don't have to stand around forever to put your name on a list. And that'll be a way that we can keep in touch and look at future meetings. There's going to be dates about potential next meetings as we go forward with more intention. And so that's going to happen today as well. A little bit of an outline. We have Stephen Hall here, who he's going to tell you his story. He's a Regina citizen who has solar installed in his house, and he's going to talk about the economics behind it and why it makes sense that way. We also have a representative from SaskPower here. I'm sorry I didn't meet you yet, but welcome. And he's going to talk about the SaskPower net metering program, the rebate, and some of those things that we might know a little bit about, but he's going to speak on behalf of SaskPower, so we appreciate that. Susan and I are going to talk about 2 examples of different co-op models, options that we could look at. And of course, that doesn't mean we have to go with either of those 2, or we'll open that up to discussion, what you guys think. But there's a couple models that have been done in different parts of, one is as close as Saskatoon, and the other one we're going to look at is actually in Washington, D.C., and is an interesting model as well. So we're going to talk about that. That'll take us till about 8 o'clock-ish, or after 8, and then we'll have those sign-up sheets, and we're going to move. Actually, there's open mic night tonight in case you guys brought your guitars. But if that's not the case, we're going to move over to the gallery after we have the presentations here at about 8:15, and we're going to have some opportunity just for conversation and more questions if you guys have questions. So with that said, I'm just going to introduce Stephen Hall, and he's going to come up here. You guys probably know him for other reasons than his solar-powered house. But Stephen's going to come up here and talk about that. Again, one thing I was really impressed when Morgan and I went over to Stephen's house was just how he crunched the numbers and talked about the economics behind this, and why it just, even if the environment isn't a concern to you, the economics just make sense now. And so he's going to talk about that. So thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, Josh. It's great to be here to share the story of my experience, my family's experience with solar. Josh has promised you about some discussion about the economics of solar, and I'm definitely going to be getting into that. I am a bit of a compulsive storyteller, and I told Josh that it might go a teeny bit longer than 20 minutes, just because that's just in my nature. But so I'm calling the talk Looking Toward 2059. There's a reason for that, which will be revealed in a bit. It's really a case study, and it's a case study of my own personal experience with solar, and in particular, having had it now for 2 3/4 years. This photograph was taken on a sunny Saskatchewan day in 2014. That's my backyard, and my wife there, and my 2 kids. On the left is Nellie, and on the right is Amelia. And a few months before this photograph was taken, Amelia turned 8 years old. And I'm an older dad, obviously. And at the time the photograph was taken, I was 53. Now, Amelia turning 8 was kind of a weird time for me, because that was the age that I was when my dad passed away. That's my dad on the left, wearing the sunglasses, and that kid there that looks totally out of place in this photograph is me. And I think it's my favorite photograph of me and my dad. And I think it says something that back in 1966, my dad would take me to an important meeting with none other than the U.S. Air Attaché. 3 years after this photograph was taken, my dad was killed in a motorcycle accident. I was 8, and as a consequence, I have a really clear picture of what it was like to be 8. I remember the world, I remember my time, I remember that time in my life. So when my daughter Amelia turned 8, it was kind of a big deal for me. And in fact, I called 2014 the year of Dad. And I spent quite a bit of time thinking about my dad and my own kids and the role that I played as a dad in their lives. I thought a lot about what it was like to be 8 years old. And then one day it occurred to me. I really clearly remember what my life was like when I was Amelia's age. But then I wondered, what will Amelia's life be like when she's my age? At the time, as I mentioned, I was 53, and so wondering about what Amelia's life was like when she was 53 was really asking the question, what will the world be like in 2059? Because in 2059, Amelia will be 53. There are lots of things that could happen in the next 40 years that I have, frankly, no control over whatsoever, and there's nothing I can do about them. But what about the climate? And, I force myself to think about that, and I ask myself, well, if I'm really concerned about my children's future, shouldn't I be doing something about it? So as I sat on my back deck watching my kids play, I sort of became increasingly uncomfortable as I contemplated what life would be like in 2059. I worried that Nellie and Amelia would look back to themselves and ask, what did Mom and Dad do to help us? Did they do anything to reduce their carbon footprint? And then I noticed something. Now, we have a garage in our backyard, and I use it as a workshop and a studio, and it has this huge roof that just happens to be facing southwest. And I started to wonder how much sun that roof got in a day. And so the next day, I set up a time-lapse camera. And I set it first thing in the morning, and you can see that as the sun comes around, it really doesn't hit the roof with full sunlight until about 9 o'clock in the morning. And then from 9 through till the later part of the morning and the early part of the afternoon, it's absolutely in full sunlight. And then you see rather ominously that the shadows start to encroach there. It's kind of appropriate, it's close to Halloween. And at 3 o'clock, the shadows hit the top of the roof, and they start encroaching over the top of the roof. And really from about 3 p.m. till about 6 p.m., that direct sunlight is being inhibited a little bit by that shade. But really, there was a lot of sunlight, and I was like, wow, okay, there's something's there. It's worth looking into. And so I looked into it further. And I found this graphic, which probably a lot of you have seen. And this is a graphic that I frankly just don't understand why it doesn't get a whole lot more attention than it does. Because it basically shows that Saskatchewan, particularly the southern part of Saskatchewan, is one of the absolute best places in Canada, if not North America, to have solar panels. Annual PV solar production in our zone there is basically for every installed for every installed kilowatt of solar, you get up to about 1,400 kilowatt hours of electrical energy produced annually, and this is fantastic. So this was looking very promising. So the next question, obviously, was, well, what would it cost? What is this going to cost to put solar on our roofs? And I went to 5 different companies, and this has been 2.5 years ago, so there were 5 different companies. And I got them to come and look and explain our situation and so on. They all came, and all of the quotes that I got were pretty much in the ballpark in terms of the system spec. So a 30-panel array is what was spec'd, what would fit on that roof. Each panel would be 255 watts, so 30 of them would create an array of 7.65 kilowatts. And that would produce, with the orientation of my studio there, that would produce about 8 megawatt hours of energy annually, 8,000 kilowatt hours of energy annually. If I applied to the SaskPower net metering program, which Darcy is going to be talking about in a little while, I could get net metering. It's stuck. There we go. Now here's the kicker. So 28 grand. 28 grand is what that would cost. But because I was applying to the net metering program, which is fantastic, by the way, I'm a big fan of SaskPower. Let's decide. You're standing in the way there. Sorry. Oops. Yeah. Can you just hit the backspace button? Sorry, I've got to change over to a different. That's okay. Reset. It's $23,000. So
we just did the smallest
possible. My wife and I
possible.
spent a lot of time talking and thinking and deciding about what we should do. And so on December 12th, 2014, Sound Solar, which was the company that won the bid, a great company, started the install. In the days before December 12th, the racking that you can see there had been put up, as well as some wiring and some prep work. And then the solar panels themselves, they go up pretty quickly. It's pretty slick, actually. And by the end of the day, it was a long day and it ended in the evening, but by the end of the day, it was done. And that's the crew. So here we are 2.5 or 2 3/4 years later, and I've had the benefit of tracking my numbers and looking at costs and looking at what's happening to the cost of electricity we have to buy from SaskPower and so on. And so I've got some numbers that I can share with you. So in the lifetime, so far, we've created almost 24 megawatt hours of electricity, which translates to about 8 megawatt hours or 8,000 kilowatt hours annually. And most importantly, we've averted 9,371 kilograms of CO2 from going into the atmosphere. And again, that was kind of what led me on the journey. That's why we sort of decided to spend all that money. I think it's important to, as we look at solar, to look at the counterpart a little bit. And so I want to give, I want to be fair. I want to give equal time a little bit to coal-fired power. The reality in Saskatchewan is the majority of our power comes from coal-fired generators. So I wanted to just kind of touch on and compare. It's like compare how one creates electricity versus the other. So we'll start with coal-fired power. Of course, it starts with burning coal. And that coal creates heat. That heat boils water. The water creates steam. The steam rotates a turbine. The turbine rotates a generator, and we've got electricity. Phew. It's a long process, but it works, and it actually does a great job, and it's served our province well for quite a long time. The problem, of course, is that when we burn coal, we create CO2. And that's an issue. But there are other issues with this model, which I'll get into a little while, that don't actually have anything to do with CO2.
Strip mining?
Solar power, on the other hand, so similar, we have a machine that creates electricity, and here's how it creates electricity. So the sun shines, that's the beginning, and then, oh look, that's it. The sun shines, and the PV panels create electricity. I've had this thing for 2.5 years, 2 3/4 years. It's still magic to me. It's still amazing. I have dug into the science, and I understand how it works, and we can talk about photons, hitting electrons, and so on. The reality is there are no moving parts. The sun shines, we create electricity. This is incredible. So what about maintenance? A lot of people want to know about maintenance, and are there costs associated with maintenance? Well, I'm going to speak actually about something that happened on June 19th, 2015, which was about 6 months
It was shooting
after
off
I
of
got
our
the solar
panels onto the
panels.
car. You remember that one? That was our first hailstorm.
Terrified at this moment, actually, because I wasn't sure whether those
Yeah, you can see him just firing off of there.
These hailstones were almost golf ball size. They were very big. You can see bits and pieces of debris and trees coming down. My kids were quite upset by this.
Yeah, me neither. That's brutal. Cars are going to get dented up.
Yeah. So the RAV4, which is the one in the front here, had $3,500 hail damage. The family van at the back there was written off. The cost of repairing it exceeded the value of the vehicle. It is an older vehicle, but still. Our renter's car, we're not sure what happened to that, but I assume that they had equal damage to my wife's car. Here's the thing. So not only did the solar panels not get damaged in that hailstorm, of course, this is in the first 6 months, so I was an absolute geek, paying attention to every day how much production and trying to kind of guess. It's like, see if I could tell how much production was going to be by how sunny it was and so on. And the day after this, it was a sunny day, and the numbers went up. I'm like, what?
Cleaned it off.
And then I realized, it cleaned them. It cleaned them. Okay, so obviously the elephant in the room is $23,000. It's expensive. There's no question that that's a lot of money. That's a lot of capital. So, but let's unpack that a little bit. So yes, 23 grand is the total cost. And that's turnkey, that's everything, right? That's the racking, the solar panels, the bidirectional meter, all that installation, everything. And the thing is that the panel, the system is guaranteed for 25 years, okay? And that's very important because now you have something that's guaranteed for 25 years. The actual specific spec is that it has to produce up to 80% of its original spec after 25 years, okay? Otherwise they get replaced, they're under warranty. So here's the thing, if it's guaranteed for 25 years, if you amortize the cost of the solar panels, you amortize 23 grand over 25 years, and I used 4% because we borrowed money and we actually got even a little bit less than 4%, but I used 4%, but it's $125 a month. So does that mean the monthly expense is $125 a month for me to have electricity? Well, no, not quite. So let's just get into that. I took these two photographs this morning at 8 a.m. It's the same meter, okay, it's just different readouts on the same meter. It's my meter, it's a bidirectional meter. It counts, it's from SaskPower's point of view. So on the left here, delivered DEL, 18,528 kilowatt hours. That's SaskPower delivering electricity to me. And then on the right side, REC received from me to SaskPower 14,257. So you can see that there's a shortfall. Right? I've had the system at 30 months. I'm not net zero here. So it's a shortfall of 4,271 kilowatt hours. Over 30 months, that averages out to 142 kilowatt hours a month. And at the current market rate of electricity, that averages out to just under $20 a month. So if we do a kind of a full breakdown of the total solar cost, we've got that $125 capital repayment. We've got the $19.51 per month of extra electricity that I have to buy to cover off all our needs. There's a $22.01 admin fee. Look at your SaskPower bill. We all pay it, right? If you're in residential Regina. And then there's some surcharges and taxes of about $6.41. So all of that adds up to $173 a month grand total. Okay, so that's what I currently pay on average for my electricity. Okay, that includes capital cost repayment and additional electricity and a few other fees. So now let's look at the pre-solar cost. This is my house. It's a fairly big house. It's 2,200 square feet. We've got a rental suite, and I've got my studio and workshop at the back. So it's a bigger house, and the reality is we use more energy than the average Saskatchewan household. So before I got solar, my average use was around 1150 kilowatt hours a month. At today's rate, that cost, because again we want to compare apples to apples, at today's rate the cost of me to buy electricity then is $158 a month.
$20 a month.
We add in the $22 mid fee and the surcharge, and we get to $186 as a grand total. So now we have apples to apples. Okay, we can compare a monthly cost with solar and a monthly cost without solar. So I don't know if you recall, the monthly cost with solar is $173 a month. Monthly cost without solar is $186, except that in March, there's been an application, I believe, Darcy will correct me if I'm wrong, 5% increase has been applied for March, so that number would change to $195 a month. So wait, what?
Cheaper.
So when people ask me, a lot of people when they find out I've got solar, they say, what's the payback? What's the payback? When are you gonna, what's the payback? It's like, honestly, I don't know what this means. I pay less now, including capital cost repayment for electricity, than I did 2 3/4 years ago. And I'm gonna keep paying more or less the same. Again, the only exposure I've got is that small amount, that monthly excess, so I'm exposed to like $20 a month to a 5% increase in March. But otherwise, I'm pretty protected from rate increases. So rate increases for me are ROI. Just bring them on. So why? What's going on here? Why is this? How can this be? Well, a key thing is no moving parts. Okay, no moving parts, no maintenance. Free sunlight. Free sunlight that gets converted into electricity.
He doesn't need
This is critical.
No signs off.
Because if it's free, then the marginal cost for that electricity, the marginal cost for me to
Close to
produce
no-
another kilowatt hour is zero. It's zero. It doesn't matter how cheap coal gets. It doesn't matter how cheap gas gets or any of these other fossil fuels. You can't beat zero marginal cost. Okay? And that's the kicker. That's what's really going on here. When Josh was saying and Alcoa was talking about how it's a game changer and things are changing, this is why. So I don't know how many people have taken sort of Economics 101 here, but we'll do a quick sort of Economics 101 comparing what marginal cost is all about. The camera on the left is an old film camera. There's a capital cost associated with buying that camera. Okay, you're going to pay for the camera, the lens, and whatnot. But there's also a marginal cost associated with every picture that you take. Every time you click that shutter, okay, you're going to use some film. There's going to be a processing cost. And even if you've got really cheap film and really cheap processing, there's still going to be a cost. On the right, we've got a digital camera. No film, no processing, zero marginal cost. You take a picture, it doesn't cost you a thing. You still have a capital cost, okay? But you have zero marginal cost. Okay, well, what about the intermittency of solar? So this is a big issue, and a lot of people, some people are quite snarky about that. I'll get into that in a moment. And it's true. I'm not going to pretend that the sun doesn't go down. On the left was yesterday, October 22nd. So it's a pretty average day actually for this time of the year. I missed a bit of sunlight in the middle of the day. There was probably some clouds going through. But I still managed to produce 21 and change kilowatt hours. The best day I've had so far was 46.7 kilowatt hours, and the worst day was 2.9 kilowatt hours. So absolutely, there's intermittency, and that's an issue, and it's an issue that has to be dealt with. Oh wait, actually I should have shown that. It was really fascinating to watch the solar eclipse, yeah. So that orange curve in the middle kind of represents, production, typical solar production. That would be a very sunny day. There's no clouds or anything, so it's a perfect day. Starts in the morning, probably 6, depending on the time of year, 6 or 7 a.m., and then goes to the evening. So that's your production. And then the red curve there, often called the duck curve, is typical kind of consumption. Okay, so that's the energy demand. That's what you need. And so obviously you see the problem because we're producing. In fact, I'll just go through it here. So this left chunk here, number one, is early morning consumption. So from midnight to, let's say, 6 a.m., obviously no production happening there. Number two here is solar production that coincides with consumption. So that whatever, that portion of the solar production is used immediately. And then you've got number three, which is the excess solar production. So I'm a net meter customer. So when I've covered my own needs, that excess production goes to the grid, to SaskPower, and my neighbors use it or whoever. Or it could go to batteries, okay? And that's something that is coming thick and fast, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And then this last chunk here is late night consumption. And of course, this is the problem we're dealing with, is that how do we even that out? How do we have power when we need it? Even though we're producing it at a certain time of the day, how do we have it when we need it? I mentioned some snarky people that mock me and say, well, yeah, you got solar, so what happens when it's dark? What happens when it's cloudy and so on? It's like I say, yeah, absolutely, you're right. By the way, do you have running water in your house? You have running water. Even when it's not raining? Really? That's amazing. So we figured out how to store water and have it whenever we need it. We figured that out a long time ago. It's no different. We need to figure out the same thing with electrons. We need to have them when we need them. We produce them when the sun is shining, when the wind is blowing, and so on. And we need a way to store it. And guess what? There is all kinds of activity happening to do that. I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to innovation. I'm in the creative industries, so I'm a creative consultant. That's what I do for a living. And so I'm fascinated by innovation. Also used to be a bit of a car nut, not so much anymore. This is the first Porsche. This machine was designed by Ferdinand Porsche. Ferdinand Porsche, you might know, designed the Volkswagen. His son, Ferry Porsche, designed the Porsche sports car. Okay, but his father, Ferdinand Porsche, was the original designer of the Volkswagen, and this was his first vehicle ever made. It was called the P1. It was built in 1898. It was an electric car. This blew me away. I was angry when I saw this. I was like, what? And here's the thing. So here's its spec. It had a top speed of 35 kilometers an hour. Okay, no big deal. But it had a range of 78 kilometers. In 1898, it had a range of 78 kilometers.
Pretty good.
So what the heck happened? Well, of course, internal combustion engines happened. And the economics associated with internal combustion engines and being able to get fuel to them and all of that, that dominated and that basically suppressed the innovation in electric vehicles and batteries for, pretty much 120 years. So we're in catch-up mode, big time, right? We're in catch-up mode, but what's happening is that ship is moving very quickly now, very, very quickly. You've got things like the Tesla Gigafactory, which has come online recently. And you may have been watching that, but it's really just one initiative. There's a whole bunch of initiatives globally dealing with how to store the electrons for when we need them, and how to smooth out that demand curve and store that energy so that we have it when we need it. By the way, don't trust anything I say. Go to Google. Do your due diligence in finding out. Don't trust everything Google says. But scout around, look around. If you Google cost curve for solar panels, I did this morning. They look like this. They're all sort of going down. Okay, this is what has happened. The capital cost has come down dramatically, and it's liquefied the market. Okay, it's opened it up. Something that was prohibitive even 5 years ago is not anymore. And now I'm paying less for electricity than I used to. If you look at the cost curve for batteries, it's basically the same curve. You're doing the same thing. Battery storage right now, the cost of storing a kilowatt hour of energy, and depending on where you look and what graph you're trusting, it's sort of somewhere, it feels like between 250 and 300 US per kilowatt hour. It's projected to go down, especially once a Gigafactory comes online and Panasonic's factory comes online and all these other things happen. It's projected to go down to sub 100 US per kilowatt hour by 2020, 2021. That's a game changer. That is an absolute game changer. So what does the future look like? Well, I found this image here, and this image, by the way, is meant to represent the internet. And of course, we all know that the internet kind of changed the world, and what changed the world was this web of interconnected nodes. And the key thing here is that the internet is not powerful because of some massive node that feeds everyone. Okay, that's not why it's powerful. There are some big nodes, Amazon and Google and so on, there are some big nodes. But the power of the internet is really because it's an interconnected network of modestly powered nodes, of small nodes, of little laptops and desktop computers and other smaller computers that are sending little packets of information up and bringing packets of information down. This is actually a really, really relevant metaphor for us to pay attention to what the future of energy production is going to look like. Okay? You may have heard about distributed energy. You know, I like to call it the Internet of Energy because it helps me understand it a bit better. But all these nodes, if you imagine all of these nodes are small producers, guys like me who are producing little bits of extra energy and sending it up to the grid, who may in fact get a battery in the not too distant future, or might buy an EV, and maybe the EV can be plugged into the grid, and maybe the EV could be helped to back up portions of the grid as well. And all of these nodes are going to be interconnected and feeding the grid, pulling from the grid, and so on. We're going to move away from these massive nodes and energy producers that burn fossil fuels. There we go. So I want to wrap up pretty quickly here and just say, you know, go back to the beginning and say, well, you know, 2.5 years ago we started on this journey, my wife and I, really because we felt like we do have to do something for our kids. What kind of world are we leaving Amelia and Nellie? The strange thing that's happened in the last 3 years is that I've really changed my tune. I actually rarely talk about the environment anymore. Frankly, I don't need to. I'm really preoccupied with making the economic case for solar. It makes so much sense. It really does. And honestly, I think it's inevitable. I think if you look at other jurisdictions in the planet, and I'm not talking Germany, you know, I mean, 3 years ago I was saying, look at Germany, look at what Germany's doing. Now it's like, look what China's doing, look what India's doing, look what Africa's doing. Okay? It's really changed. The dynamics of solar have changed. And in particular, the zero marginal cost of electricity. I cannot get enough information about this because it's absolutely a game changer. And there are other economic forces at play as well. We're entering a time, we're in a time, actually that Al Gore called the virtuous cycle, where cheaper costs create more demand, and more demand drives innovation. Innovation further reduces costs, lower costs increase volumes. So this is a fantastic time. And it's a great time for us to get together as a community and contemplate how we're going to go forward and how we're going to get Regina to get on board and start getting some of these small nodes going. So I don't pitch. I mean, I did it for this presentation because the truth is that's how my story began. But I don't really try to tug on people's heartstrings anymore. I'm frankly more interested in their purse strings, and I think they are too. I really do. I've sort of come to believe, actually, because I've been concerned about the environment all my life, but I've come to believe that environmental forces are actually pretty weak. They're kind of like magnetism, you know. A magnetic force, you can, on a compass, it'll tell you where to go, but it's really easy to ignore. Economic forces are like gravity. You can't ignore them, okay? You cannot ignore them. And the economic forces have turned. The tide has turned in our favor. And it's incredibly exciting. So I'm feeling way better about 2059. Amelia, just a reminder, will be 53. Nellie there will be 50. And in case you're wondering, I'll be 98. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Stephen. And again, I'm sure some of you guys have some questions, but we'll have to wait until we have the question time afterwards. So I'm going to invite Susan Burley up here again, and or do you want me just to do it? Okay. Darcy, correct? I didn't have a chance to meet you. So this time we're going to invite SaskPower rep Darcy up here to talk about some of the programs that SaskPower has, and again, I think you'll be around for questions afterwards as well. Okay.
What time is it?
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. I just want to thank Susan and Stephen and Josh for inviting me out to talk to you today about solar. It is in the news. Everybody's interested in it. People are doing it like Stephen is doing it. And hopefully I can give a little bit of insight on what's happening in Saskatchewan and programs that SaskPower has, and give you a little bit more information on that. So Stephen's going to handle my slide changes, so you can change the next slide there. Here we go. I'll talk about our net metering program. That's our most popular program. The descriptions, the activity in the province, and the net metering rebate. Talk about the money. And also our small power producers supply option program that we also have for the small suppliers. The net metering program, some of the highlights. We do allow different environmentally preferred technologies into the program, but solar has been the most popular since the program inception. Predominantly they take up probably 70% of all the technologies is the solar, and the other 30% is wind. The program allows for an interconnection of up to 100 kilowatts in size, and that's probably about 400 solar panels, to put into perspective. The primary purpose of the net metering program is to help customers offset their electrical consumption. And it is available to all SaskPower and other provincial utility customers on a residential, farm, and businesses. So it's wide open. Institutions, schools, churches, they've all taken advantage of the program. You're allowed to bank that excess kilowatt hours that Stephen was showing in his slides there, that in the summertime, yeah, you'd be producing more than you'd be consuming in the summer. So that excess amount is not used by the house or the building. It's recorded on the bidirectional meter and banked into your account. So you have that credit in your account, and the next month you use some electricity, and you can pull that credit applied against that consumption to further reduce your power bill. Again, the credits are carried month per month, but we do allow for a 12-month time period for your banking of those credits. The anniversary time period that we have set up for customers for solar systems that they want to install, we set that time period from April to March. Starting in April, it allows you to maximize your generation production over the summertime, and then use those credits that are in your account against your consumption over the wintertime when you're having lower production levels. So by the time spring comes around, you've used up all your credits, and then they're not reset to zero again. And as Stephen said, yeah, you will have that basic administrative charge, even if you have enough solar energy to use all that your electricity that you are consuming, you will have that one monthly solar charge. And with taxes involved, yeah, it works out to about $30 a month. Next slide. And to participate in the program, there is some costs involved. Initially, there's the application and preliminary interconnection study fee, which is $315. Once your application is approved, it's reviewed by our engineering department. You can proceed to obtain an electrical permit, and that's using either yourself or an electrician that you've hired, or a solar supply company that's doing that work for you. And that ranges, again, between that $150 to $400, depending on the size of the project. And then the bidirectional meter cost is $475 for STS.
It's not even a smart meter.
So total, your upfront interconnection fees and costs involved is around $1,000. Now, Stephen showed his bidirectional meter there on the different numbers. This is the same type of image, just a different meter. This is when they're first installed. This is one meter, just two views of the two separate registers. The DEL, is the delivered kilowatt hours from grid to the customer, and the received is the received excess kilowatt hours from the customer to the grid. Now, once you become a net metering customer, your power bill will actually change, and it's maybe a little tough to see from the back of the room, but it does show your consumed electricity each month, as well as the net generated amount of electricity each month. And on the left-hand side there, you can see those numbers. You have an excess amount of credit that's in your account. It pulled from last month's credit of $1,079 to further reduce your power bill, and taking to the next month is $1,556. So that's how much you'll see when you're a net metering customer on your bill. Next slide. A little bit about the uptake in the program. The program has been around since 2008. I think that year we had 8 customers participate in the program. And up until just this past month, we have 975 customers, and we'll probably reach 1,000 customers under the net metering program by the end of this year. Now, as I mentioned, there's 3 electric utilities in the province, if you're not aware of. SaskPower covers most of the province. The Saskatoon Light and Power, they have their own municipal utility, as well as the Swift Current Light and Power. And with those 2 cities themselves, there's about 97, 100 net metering customers within their district